Okay, and welcome back to question 4 out of 5. Now, I did debate having this question, but histogram questions, often students find them quite difficult. So I thought it was worth going through it anyway. So I appreciate this is hard to do on a piece of paper or on a screen, but either way, think about how you would do the question. And there is something in this question that I want to make sure you spotted, albeit I recognise, again, it can be hard to do on a small screen. So have a go, back in a minute. Okay, so what makes this question difficult is I don't have a frequency density set of numbers. In other words, there's no values on the y-axis. So I'm going to need a way of getting some values on the y-axis. Whenever you get a question like this, two things. Firstly, always make sure you've read what units are in. So I'm working in minutes and it's children walking to school. The reason I say that is sometimes it switches the units and you need to make sure you're on top of the units that you need. The second thing is somewhere it must give you the rectangle and it must also give you all the information for that rectangle. And in this case, it tells me there are 10 children for whom m is less than 20. So in other words, this box here must have a frequency or area of 10. So if I know the area is 10 and I know the width is 20, it must be the case that I can work out using my frequency density formula that the frequency density height is going to be 0.5. Again, let's not overthink this. All I'm saying is the area of this rectangle is 10. I know the width is 20. So what must the height be? That's all that's happening with histograms. And I know the height is a half. And once I know the height is a half, it then means I can start filling in the rest of the histogram. It would be quite unusual for this number to be a very strange or difficult number. I've seen numbers like 4 and I've seen numbers like 5 come up a couple of times. I've never seen anything really strange in terms of decimals. So that would probably mean you've got the wrong number. The point is, I've now done arguably the hardest bit of the question. I've now worked out my frequency density scale. What does the question want me to do? The question wants me to work out an estimate. Now, the reason it says estimate is I'm going to be using fractions of these rectangles. So therefore, I don't know exactly where all the people sit. So I'm estimating based on the size of the rectangle. So I want an estimate for the number of children who are between 50 and 80. So what I need to do is I need to work out the frequencies of all these rectangles here. In other words, I need to work out the areas. Now I'm going to go over the top here. I'm going to do more than I need to do just to demonstrate how to do these sorts of questions generally. So I would label, if I was in an exam, I'd label them A, B, C, D, E, F, and it just means then it's very clear what my table is doing over to the right here. The class widths are easy. So 0 to A is 20 across, B is 10 across, C is etc. etc. So I've got the numbers for all the widths of my rectangles. Then I can use my scale that I've worked out in the first part to work out the different heights. So we know already the height of A is a half. The height of B. Now, part of the question is to make sure you understand what the scale is. So I can see that each small square is 0.1. So B is 3.2, C is 4.5, etc., etc. So I can fill all those in. Again, I don't actually need to do all this data, but I'm doing it just to sort of help explain the question. And then the frequency is going to be the class width, or the width times by the frequency density, which you can think of as the height. And that gives me all my frequencies, which are these numbers written on the screen now. Now, again, I've done more than I need to here, but just to sort of explain where the numbers come from. Then the question says, work out an estimate for the number of children who are between 50 and 80. What is crucial, and I'm going to put a little symbol up here so you can see what I'm trying to work out, is you need to work out what fraction of rectangle D 50 is. In other words, rectangle D goes from 40 to 60, so 50 is halfway across, so I need half of rectangle D. I need all of rectangle E because that's between 50 and 80. And this is where it's a little bit more tricky. So this is the other thing that I wanted to see if you could notice. This line here is not on the 70. This line here is actually on the 75. And it's a mean little part of the question that it wanted you to be very careful to make sure you knew where the split was. So here I can see that 75 to 80 and 80 to 100, well, I can split those into 5. So in other words, I want 1/5 of the F. I'm going to add all those things together. So let's just write down what I need. So I need half of D. I need all of E. And I need 1/5 of F. Again, take into account this number here is 75, not 70. I can use the numbers above, so it's going to be half of 58 plus all of 48 plus 1/5 of 50, and that's going to give me the final value of 87. And 87 is your answer to this question. If you got that, well done. Obviously very hard to do on a phone or an iPad or a computer, but it's knowing how to do the question. That's what matters. As ever, please do like, subscribe, any comments in the box below, please, and I will be back for tomorrow's question. Thanks all.